Bing. Good morning.
FHS, today is Friday, March 29th, 2024. Would you please join me in a minute of silence? Please stand if you are able and join me in the pledge. To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Congratulations to all those who had 90% or above attendance in the third quarter. You're being honored with your names, and they will be displayed in Phase 3 first floor lobby. A special congratulations to the 19 students who had perfect attendance during this time. They are Allison Bailey, Tony Bowen, Kendra Hayes, Achilles Hernandez, Catherine Lim, Logan McRedmond, Miller Ron, Brittany Sinart, Nora Sharif, Christopher Hernandez Rodriguez, Bowie Lynn, Sean Randall, Leonardo Zhang, Alexander Galtney, Juan Gomez, Alex Syria, Kai Tipsmark, Benjamin Cartwright, and Serena Patel. Congratulations to you all. If you heard your name, please swing by the Phase 3 first floor office to claim your gift card. Thank you and have a great day.
All right, good morning, guys. So we have in this unit spent one day on 3.3 with expanding and condensing, and then last class we spent one full class period on 3.4 solving logarithmic equations or exponential equations, both actually. So today should be a little bit lighter on you, but the handout that you picked up, if you'd please number that as 104. This is 3.3, 3.4 worksheet 1. I will have a second worksheet for you on Monday. But now that you've seen all of this, you had a reminder to all of this, some time to practice all of this, I feel like you need to try a practice quiz to kind of see where you stand, get an idea of how much more effort you need to put into it, get an idea of which questions you're weak on. So, one part of class today will be me giving you time to do that. So I'm going to give you about 30 minutes in a minute to try this practice quiz and see how it goes. And then since we've got time, I'll go over the entire thing and you can make corrections, circle the questions you struggled with, and you will know what you need to review. I also promised, the other thing I give you today is I had promised you last time that I'd give you more time on the book assignment since it was a little bit rushed and we had the class time where you didn't need to do it for homework. So that 103 was the book assignments you worked on in class last time. So if you don't finish with that in class today, you will need to do that for homework. And for homework, I will ask that you turn in 101, 103, and 104. So 101 was the 3.3 book work. A lot of you have already turned that in. 103 is the 3.4 book work, which most of you guys will not be finishing until today. And then 104 is this practice quiz that you're about to look at. So before I set a timer here and give you 30 minutes to try this practice quiz, you need to do this without a calculator, without your notes, obviously, just see how you would do. Is there any questions about the agenda today before I start that timer? Okay. So 30 minutes from now, finished or not, we'll go over the practice quiz, and I'll help you connect the dots to what you're missing out on. So please, I don't know that you need a full 30 minutes, but go ahead and take care of that first, please. 15 minutes, and we'll go over the practice quiz. So you should be about halfway done with the practice quiz at least, to make sure you're on track there. been 30 minutes. So I believe I have the answers to this posted on the website. So if you checked your answers already and you're all good, then that's great. But whatever you were struggling with or missed, that would be where you need to give me your attention here. Again, this is pretty similar to what your quiz will look like. Again, your quiz is not even on Monday. We've got one more day just because this stuff is that important. But let me go ahead and go over each of these, and then if there's any of them you'd like me to go back to, I'll give you a chance at the end. All right, so question 1 was about change of base. So especially if your quiz ends up being any multiple choice, you need to know both ways to do change of base. That could be with common logs, base 10s, or natural logs, base e's. Either one of those would work, and the only one listed was A. Obviously, we wouldn't list 2 correct answers, but we might list a correct answer like this, but we might also do it with common logs. So just because you got that one right, make sure that you know this would have also been acceptable. Okay, number 2, find the expression that is equivalent to the given logarithmic expression. So they're wanting us to simplify this. And just kind of glancing at the answers there, looks like they want us to do some expanding. But one of the first things you're going to have to deal with is this square root. So you have to remember that square root is the same thing as an exponent of a half. And then once you see it's an exponent of a half on something you're taking the log of, the 1/2 can come down out front. Okay, and then we could certainly expand this guy. Division inside of a log could expand as subtraction. So this is 1/2 times all of this, not just times the first part, so parentheses or distribute. So we will ask you to expand both ways and condense both ways. So division expands into subtraction, and now this matches up with choice A again. It's like choice A for the second time. But you really need to deal with that square root and get it up out of the way before you try to expand. If you try to do it in a different order, that's going to cause you problems. All right, with question 3, it says, let's condense to try to figure out which one of these would be equivalent. So if they are separated by addition, we could condense a log base 9 and a log base 9 to a log base 9 with multiplication. And that would have to be choice D. Addition condenses to multiplication. Subtraction condenses to division. It's the only 2 types of condensing that you can do. All right, number 4 looks like it's testing the other part of that. We've got a log base 4 and a log base 4, so those could condense into a log base 4. And subtraction condenses to division. Now, this doesn't look like any of the answers, but that's because we can divide these. 35 divided by 7 would be 5. So you should have gone with choice C for number 4. Okay, 5 is very similar to the one I did with you on your notes. One of them that I ask you to do is guided practice because it has a common error here. So once again, division would expand as subtraction. This doesn't look like any of the answers because you can expand this some more. So since these are multiplied, you could expand them with addition. And my guess is that this is going to be one of the answers, but this is not the correct answer. Well, actually, that's a problem there too. I guess I need to bring down the, I should have done this already, but I should bring down the exponents down as coefficients. And this looks a lot like choice B, but choice B is not correct. So this was the thing that came up in our notes that I had you do as guided practice. When you expand this, this is minus all of this stuff. So when you expand it, it's still minus all of that stuff. So you either need the parentheses or you need to distribute, which makes this a minus sign. So this was actually C. You got to be careful that if it subtract all of it, it still subtract all of it after you expand it. And again, if I honestly don't remember if the quiz has any multiple choice. I think it actually doesn't. But even if it does, that's probably going to be one of the choices because that's the most common trap to fall into. Okay, on to the back. We got one more condensing, so this would be kind of the last question from 3.3. So I know I can condense subtraction with division, but you really should bring up the coefficients of 2 and 4 as exponents first, get them out of the way. You can only condense if these are logs of the same type. This is log base 10, this is log base 10. The x squared comes first, so it makes up the numerator. The x plus 2 to the 4th comes second, so it makes up the denominator. That looks like choice B. All right, and then on to the solving. So this is what we started doing last class in section 3.4. And 3.4 is the reason why we spend a couple of days here instead of just 1 or 2 and then quiz and move on. These take a little bit longer for students to feel comfortable with, but at the same time, they're that important. As you guys get higher and higher in mathematics, solving exponential equations are going to become more and more frequent. You got kind of introduced to it in Algebra 2, but that's about the extent of what you'd seen until this class. So those notes that we did, again, those are very carefully structured to where I know rarely I can do them in my head. Most questions need to switch forms. Rarely I need to take the log of both sides. Occasionally I need to expand or condense. Sometimes I need to factor, and sometimes they're a little more straightforward like we saw in 3.2 and not too complicated. So when I go through those list of things in my head, I'm thinking about all the tools that I'm supposed to be using. There's only one of them that's going to help you in question 7, and that is factoring. So it's fine to not be the first 3 things you think about, but you have to know that it's an option because there's no other way to start that. Whatever else you could have tried to have done creative there is going to make, well, it's not going to come out right, and it's going to be a headache for you. But if you remember to do that, also that product sum method we talked about will also factor this for you. So if you want to practice the product sum method, you can. But I think if you think to factor it and you factor it correctly, I think you'll be fine. Set this equal to 0, set this equal to 0. There's really only one more thing that they're testing you for here. Switch this from exponential to logarithmic. I know one answer is the natural log of 8. Switch this from exponential to logarithmic. You're going to think that another answer is the natural log of -1. But why does that not make sense? Right, that you can't, it's extraneous. You can't take the log of 0, you can't take the log of -1. So when we're doing this step, there's no checks or balances in there to make sure that you don't get an extraneous answer. You have to think about that at the end. That answer doesn't make sense. So you couldn't get full credit if you listed both of those. I'd have to take off at least a point. You need to know why this one doesn't work. But your real quiz isn't going to have a handful of those, but I'd be surprised if it didn't have one. So factoring if you didn't know what else to try. Okay, the bulk of the book questions that you guys did last time though are more like question 8, where there's some basic arithmetic that could be undone, like adding 10 from both sides, undoing times 2 from both sides, and then like these steps, you need to switch the forms. You're going to have to switch the forms in maybe every single question. So this would be like log base e of 15 equals 2x, or natural log of 15 equals 2x, same thing. And then just undo times 2 with divided by 2. So natural log of 15 over 2. Now, I know that it's more comfortable to have a calculator, and I'm not going to dwell on this on a lot of questions, but I do want to point out that even on the quiz, with just an extra 30 seconds of effort, you can check this answer. If you write out the original equation, it's supposed to equal 40, you plug in your answer, everywhere there's an x, you can simplify this in your head. We've practiced these properties. Times 2 divided by 2 cancels. E to the log base e of 15 is 15. That's one of the properties we ask you to know. And then you end up with 30 plus 10 is 40. And of course that's true, so then you can be sure that that's correct. I know it sounds like it would be impossible to plug that in and check, but you really only have to know one log property to be able to do that. And it's one that we did in class, so you might consider that. All right, on to number 9. I'm not a big fan of how number 9 looks, so I could multiply both sides by the denominator to make those cancel. And then I'll go ahead and distribute this. To me, that's just that's a smart approach, because I like the way that second step looks instead of what the original question was. So multiplying everything by all the denominators, kind of like we do with complex fractions, gets rid of all the fractions. If fractions what makes this question seem harder, then just deal with the fractions from the get-go. Then you could undo a add 5 from both sides. You could undo a times 5 from both sides. And like every question so far, I'm just swapping these two because I think it's easier for you to see. You should switch the form at some point. That's where negative natural log of 3 came from. Again, I'm happy to go back over any of these once we go over the last one. So if you guys have a question you want clarified, just circle it and be ready to ask. Okay, a list of think of the list of all of the things that we should try in our head. And then on question 10, most of those don't work. There's only one of the tools we talked about last class that's going to help you start this question. And that is what we did in section 3.3. If these are both log base 3 separated by subtraction, we can condense these into a single logarithm. And that's, if you can condense them, that's probably what you're supposed to do. For the 4th question in a row, we need to switch the forms. So logarithmic to exponential. I know 3 to the 3rd is 27, and I'll multiply both sides by x. Okay, now it's looking pretty basic. Feeling like I'm pretty comfortable now. I'm done with all the logarithmic stuff. I could subtract away an x from both sides and divide both sides by 26. Now, of course, make sure it's not extraneous. Remember, your answers can be 0, your answers can be negative, but when you plug it in, you need to make sure you're not taking the log of something that's 0 or the log of something that's negative. Both of those seem fine, so I would stick with that as an answer. Now, you could also plug this one in and do that by hand, but it would be a little bit harder. You'd probably have to expand some of those to help you see that. All right, on to the next to last one, number 11. So number 11 is pretty similar to number 8 to me. There's some undoing of add, subtract, multiply, or divide. Get all the easy stuff out of the way. For the 5th question in a row, I'm trying to emphasize how important this step is. If you forget that this is a tool, then this is going to go real bad for you on the quiz. But switch the forms for the 5th time in a row, and then undo times 3 with divide 3. And lastly, number 12 doesn't have any undoing of add, subtract, multiply, or divide to start off the question, but it is already in logarithmic form. So for the 6th question in a row, switching the form from whatever it was to the other form is going to be necessary. Take away 14 from both sides, divide both sides by 4, and we would get x's reduced down to 25 halves. Of course, you could plug it in and check it. You need to at least plug it in to make sure it's not extraneous. Off the top of my head, I don't know what 4 times 25 halves plus 14 is, but I know it's positive, so I know it's not going to be extraneous at least. But if you wanted to check your answer, we could plug that in and actually work through the arithmetic to see if it does come out to 2. So these would cancel. This is like 50 plus 14, which would be 64. And sure enough, 8 squared gives us 64. So not that bad to check by hand. I know you guys checked with the calculator in most of the book assignment, but on the quiz that's not going to be an option, so you might have to do this a couple times. Okay, so I know I gave just a quick overview of what I would do on all of these questions, but I didn't want to pause 12 times when you probably don't need to ask about most of these. But I do want to give you a chance to get some clarification if you need it. So, is there anything about any of these 12 that you would like to ask about? And I'll address it for you. Okay, then let me make sure that all of this is opened up in Google Classroom. I know some of it is. Okay. 101 and 103 have been opened up in Google Classroom, but I am just now doing 104. So while this stuff is fresh in your head, this practice quiz, and you realize which parts you slowed down on, which parts you got a hint from your notes, which parts you got a hint from your neighbor, which parts you didn't understand till I went over it, circle those questions, please. Those are the questions you should look back at again before we get to the quiz. So I would do that, number 1. Number 2, finish up the 3.4 book assignment if you didn't last class, as I promised I'd give you more time. So this is the more time. And before next class, which would be Monday, I need to have all 3 of those things turned into Google Classroom. So if you've got them finished, go ahead and do it. If you don't have them finished by the end of class, then that needs to be your homework to get caught up to everybody else. Again, our quiz is not even on Monday. We will have one more practice quiz and a little bit more time for you to ask questions and make sure that you've got it all summarized well. But not only are these 2 sections what your quiz will be on next Wednesday, but these 2 sections are the same sections that will be your next 50-point test. So obviously putting in the effort earlier means that you can do well on the quiz and the test. And if you drag your feet, you might not do well on the quiz, and then you will still need to put in the effort to do well on the test. And it's going to be the same 2 sections, so of course just plan appropriately. All right, but even if you do have a bunch of work to do here, you've still got about just about 45 minutes, so quite a bit of time to get all caught up. And as always, if you guys have a question, please feel free to bring it up to me. I'd be happy to help you. I just don't know when to help you if you don't tell me.